Sarah Chen had always found comfort in numbers. They made sense in a way people rarely did, following clean, predictable rules. Even quantum mechanics, with all its fuzzy probabilities and superpositions, ultimately reduced to elegant mathematics. That's what she loved about her work, the way the universe's deepest mysteries could be captured in equations, if you just knew where to look. She was staring at such an equation now, frowning at the whiteboard in her office at the Berkeley Quantum Research Center. The numbers didn't add up. The team's latest experiment with the quantum vacuum chamber was showing energy fluctuations that shouldn't be possible. According to every model they'd run, the anomalies they were measuring simply couldn't exist. "You're doing it again," Elena said from the doorway, amusement in her voice. Sarah turned to see her wife leaning against the frame, dark curls falling loose from her usually neat bun, doctor's coat wrinkled from a long shift at the hospital. Even exhausted, Elena somehow managed to look elegant. "Doing what?" "That thing where you forget time exists." Elena tapped her watch. "It's almost midnight, love. You promised you'd be home for dinner." Sarah blinked at the clock on her wall, guilt washing over her. "I'm so sorry. These readings don't make sense." "It's like we're measuring quantum fluctuations from," she hesitated, knowing how it would sound, "from another reality." Elena crossed the room and wrapped her arms around Sarah from behind, resting her chin on her shoulder to look at the equations. After 15 years together, she'd learned enough physics to follow the broad strokes of Sarah's work. Could it be instrumentation error? That's what we thought at first. But we've calibrated everything 3 times. Tomorrow we're running a controlled test too. Dr. Chen. The shout came from down the hall, followed by running footsteps. Marcus, one of her grad students, appeared in the doorway, out of breath. "The chamber, something's wrong. The containment field is fluctuating." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What? It's not even supposed to be running right now." "It started on its own," Marcus said. "Dr. Roberts is down there trying to shut it down, but..." A low hum began to vibrate through the building, making the whiteboard markers rattle in their tray. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the frequency. "Get out," she whispered, then louder, "Everyone needs to get out now." She grabbed Elena's hand and ran for the door, already hitting the emergency evacuation alarm on her phone. The humming grew louder, making her teeth vibrate. They were halfway down the hall when she realized she'd left her laptop with all their backup data. "Keep going," she told Elena, turning back. "I'll be right behind you." "Sarah, don't." 2 minutes. She was already running back to her office. The laptop was vital, weeks of irreplaceable data that might explain what was happening. She grabbed it, tucked it under her arm, and sprinted for the exit. She was 20 feet from the door when reality hiccuped. Later, she would spend years trying to describe that moment. It was like a skip in a record, a stutter in the fabric of existence itself. She saw the blast door, saw Elena's frightened face through the reinforced window, saw the security guard trying to hold it open just a few seconds longer. Then the world went white. Heat and pressure and impossible light, the quantum vacuum chamber had collapsed catastrophically, releasing energy that shouldn't exist in this universe. Sarah felt her body tear apart at the atomic level, felt reality itself splinter around her into countless branches. She died. She knew she died. She experienced the death. And then she was standing outside the blast doors, laptop clutched to her chest, staring at Elena through the window. The blast wave hit a microsecond later, but somehow, impossibly, the doors held. When the emergency teams arrived, they found 13 dead. Everyone who'd been inside the quantum physics wing. Everyone except Sarah. She sat wrapped in a shock blanket, Elena holding her hand, as the investigators asked their questions. She answered numbly, mechanically, unable to explain why she'd survived. The official report would later call it a miracle, the blast doors closing at exactly the right millisecond, the reinforced wall taking the brunt of the explosion. But Sarah knew better. She had died. She was certain of it. And somehow she was still here. That night, Lying awake in bed with Elena sleeping fitfully beside her, Sarah stared at the ceiling and ran the numbers in her head. The probability of her survival had been effectively zero, but in an infinite multiverse, zero wasn't quite zero. There would always be some vanishingly rare branch where the impossible occurred. She thought about Schrödinger's cat, about quantum superposition and the many worlds interpretation, about consciousness and continuity of experience, about what it meant that she had felt herself die, yet was somehow still thinking these thoughts. "Oh God," she whispered into the darkness, as the true horror of her situation began to dawn. She reached for Eleanor, pulling her sleeping wife close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. She didn't know it then, but it was the beginning of a very, very long goodbye. Outside their window, a shooting star traced a brief arc across the Berkeley sky. In countless other realities, Sarah Chen was dead, but in this one, this astronomically improbable branch of existence, she was alive. And she would remain alive through increasingly impossible circumstances, long after everyone she loved had turned to dust. The universe had chosen its observer, and it would never let her go.